Redditors who have gone were declared missing. What is your story? I was 8 and on vacation. Decided to go for a walk without telling anyone. Played all afternoon and the beach. Came at night. Oh boy, was everyone mad. Why did you stay out so long? Did you get lost? I left the abusive household I grew up in, leaving a note clearly stating my intentions to never return. An hour or two later I received a call from the police stating that I'd been declared missing. I explained to them my circumstances and they wished me well. Since I was of age, I was free. It'll be 3 years soon. Edit fixed a typo. How you doing? Are you living happy? Hope you good man. Good luck. I forget how old I was, but I was probably around 10. My friend and I started raking leaves for cash around our suburban neighborhood. We kept going house to house asking anyone who had a tree in their yard if they wanted them raked for $5. We eventually went to so many houses we got ourselves lost within the crisscross streets of the neighborhood, since we really never left our block of houses beforehand. Then the sun set and we found ourselves lost trying to recognize street names or anything familiar, in the dark with only street lights lighting the way. Eventually, as we're wandering lost, we hear cop sirens and lights blare and pull over and ask for our names. We got picked up and taken back to our houses. It felt like a long drive to us 10-year-olds, but in reality it was like 4 blocks. Lol, boy did we get the biggest scolding ever, and our parents took our hard-earned money. I mean, I see why they were mad, but taking your money seems like a bad lesson. Lol. May put it in the bank for a few weeks, you till after you were grounded, ha. Right. What an unhappy ending. The story of how I went missing is also one of my first memories. When I was 5, I went on holiday with my family to Scotland. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but land dominated by trees. There wasn't much to do, so my sister and I played hide and seek. I thought it would be a great idea to hide right next to the front door of the cottage we were staying in, inside of a giant bush. I watched my sister look for me for about 5 minutes, until she clearly gave up and went inside. However, I never give up on anything, and decided to stay until I was found. After a short period, 15 minutes or so, more people started playing the game. I now watched my parents sprint around in front of me, while I silently giggled in the bush thinking, I'm so good at this game. More and more people started to play, other holiday goers in cottages nearby, park rangers and police. I stayed in that bush for hours and hours until it got dark, having the time of my life. My sister was only 7, so she didn't help look for me and just sat by the doorstep. As it got darker outside, my yellow jacket got brighter, and after a whole day of searching for me in the nearby woods, my sister realized I was stood right next to her. Best game of hide and seek ever. Honestly, this sounds like something I did. They say your kids get revenge by growing up to be just like you. I am dreading the day my son gets into hide and seek. My niece has a habit of playing hide and seek without telling anyone she's playing. My daughter doesn't get to play hide and seek with her. When I was young, probably about 6, I think, my family went on vacation to Yosemite. We stayed in a small cabin at a campground. I met another kid who was a bit older than me, and we went exploring. Apparently we went a bit too far, and eventually ran into a bear cub. We just stood and stared at each other for a few minutes and went our separate ways. When I got back to the cabin, I found out that park rangers had been out looking for me because my parents had no idea where I was. For some reason they didn't think my bear story was as cool as I did. Why they didn't like the bear story? Obviously it's because they missed their chance to play with a baby bear. I had a mental breakdown in 2015 after losing a job, after having a hard year, so I packed a bag, got on my motorbike and rode to a party spot. I got out enough cash to hold me over for a week and turned off my mobile before I left town. I spent a whole week just hitting the beach, partying, hitting bars and clubs. I stayed at a backpacker hostel and hung out with random backpackers. Overall, it was an amazing and refreshing week. I left to ride back home. Just before the Great Dividing Range, I got pulled over by the cops. Turns out, my 2 coworkers I saw after I got fired were worried, so they came by my house, just to check up on me. My housemates then didn't see me for a few days, so they searched town and reported me to the cops as missing. I had a known history of depression and suicidal tendencies. The cops searched through my records. No mobile phone activity, no social media activity, no contact with family members. So it turns out while I was off trying to just escape my beep life for a week, everyone thought I'd killed myself or something. My license plate number was flagged, so when I went past the highway patrol it must have come up on their computer to pull me over. The cop was actually quite nice. He mainly just wanted to know I was okay. He called in and had me removed as a missing person. I got home 8 hours later to a lot of worried people. I honestly thought no one gave a beep about me. If I knew it was going to cause so much trouble I would have at least left a note. Man, that's great that you had so many people worried about you, and I think that's a great sign to always keep your head up even when life's got you down. You have people who love you and will be there for you, even if you don't know it. Someone who cares doesn't necessarily have to be a person who is in your life 24/7 or knows a lot about you. It can be difficult to figure out who you can ask for help, but there are people who are willing. Got tired of my dad kicking the beep out of me, so I ran away at 15. KSP found me less than a week later drunk as beep in the train yard by where I lived. Dad was pretty upset, but he got sober and stopped being a beep after that. Glad it turned out okay with your dad. I ran away from home due to my alcoholic stepmom. My dad would always file a missing person report and cops would eventually find me and bring me home. At 15 I was homeless for 6 months and selling acid for food and a place to stay. Was still better than dealing with my stepmom. She drank herself to death and I found peace. Are you doing well right now? In 2nd grade, I fell asleep on the school bus ride home and missed my stop. My mom always waited at my stop to meet me, and freaked out when I didn't get off the bus. The bus driver looked back, and since I was lying down fast asleep, he didn't see me. An hour later, I woke up at a random school bus terminal on the outskirts of town, and my mom had phoned half the town freaking out. Funny story to tell now, but my poor mother was convinced I had been kidnapped for a solid 2 hours. It really took a lot out of her. Same thing happened to me. I was reading a book and totally zoned out. Only realized what happened when the bus pulled into the bus depot. My mom was livid. Mine was weird because I was also a teen runaway but was actually with my parents. In a nutshell, 1. Ran away from home when I was 14. 2. Lived on the streets with friends or in shelters for 2 years. 3. My parents moved away from that city, so I was left behind. Long story there, but they tried their best for me, but had to let go. Last known address was with a boyfriend who was arrested along with his best friend who was dating my best friend. Landlady obviously evicted them both, which led to me having nowhere to go. Ran out of options in the middle of winter. It was a middle-of-the-night blurry event that resulted in me having nowhere to go. My best friend was able to go to her family somehow or somewhere. We got separated that night and vowed to find each other and regroup and figure it out after some sleep. At this point, after 2 years, just before my 16th b-day, I called my parents, who drove several hours and picked me up at a McDonald's at 5 a.m. and brought me back to their new city. I was determined to start over and get on a good path, with the lone support of my parents, and leave the old life completely behind. The only person I told was my best friend at the time, and I remember we were both crying. She wasn't sure about her family and asked me that once I got settled, maybe she could come to my family as well, for a new start. She went missing right after that, which I didn't know right away. I had one phone call from her where she told me things weren't good, and she was trying to get money for a Greyhound ticket to come to my new city. My boyfriend and her boyfriend were both in jail at the time. Since the 4 of us were known to be together, when she went missing, the police's first priority was to find me, but no one knew where I was, so the police themselves marked me also as missing along with her. My parents had a different last name than me and I was a minor, so there wasn't a whole lot of information on me. Basically, they knew I was an underage street kid who couldn't be accounted for, whose best friend was also missing. Maybe 2 months later, I was settled into my new life. My parents registered me in school, bought me new belongings, I got a part-time job, and they also got me a therapist through some sort of free social services. That got my name into the system. The police has also pieced that her last call was to a number in the same city where I was now registered in social services. While at school one day, the police showed up and brought me into the guidance counselor's office and asked me a hell of a lot of questions that I don't remember now, but I do remember them telling me I was a missing person, and then grilling me about knowing where the other girl was and that I had to know something. But it was just a really bizarre coincidence that I had burned out on street life at the same time she went missing. The most tragic part of this story is that she had died. Her body was found later that spring, after the snow melted, which I saw on the news. They said she froze to death, no foul play. I had nightmares for so long about this, that she was knocking on my bedroom window pleading to come in from the cold. That was all late 80s. News back then wasn't so dramatic as it is now, and even her death was a small clip in a newspaper, no headlines or anything like that. There was no Amber Alert back then, especially not for street people with criminal boyfriends. The only reason the police were after us was because her mother reported her as missing. A lot of it is a blur to me now. But in 2007, when FB started getting mainstream, I got several messages from people I knew back then, saying they thought I was dead, and was it really me? It was really bizarre. Old friends from that city had said that we both went missing. My friend's body was found and they never knew what became of me. I am sorry for what you went through, and the loss of your friend. Not me, but my hubby, and this was years ago. Hubby was about 8 or 9 years old when he and a group of boys were approached by some middle-aged Italians to sell candy. The kids were loaded into a van and taken to neighboring towns to hawk this candy. At some point the kids started asking when they were going home, as the van was going further than they were expecting. A few kids started crying, then out comes a gun and they're told, "You're not going home." More tears, and then the van stopped, I believe for a bathroom stop, but it was near an open field. A few of the kids decided to make a mad dash through this field and made it to a grocery store. The authorities were alerted and their parents came to collect them.